So those are my two big thoughts that I wanted to share with you. It's the budget fight. It'll be happening in the next 10 days. Pop the popcorn, should be very interesting. Current funding resolution ends on April 8th. I think it's time to pick a fight. But this vision of renewed federalism, I really do believe is a part of a conversation I'd like to be a part of across this country in the years ahead. Because I think it's part of, I think the fight over fiscal discipline now is the answer in the short term, but that's the real long-term solution. You mentioned Art Laffer, and I'm excited to hear he's working with the California Recovery Project. I have decided that Art Laffer might actually be an extraterrestrial. I've seen pictures of him at Ronald Reagan's side in the 1970s and 80s, and he doesn't look any different than he does today. And I'm currently examining Civil War photographs of President Lincoln to see if there's Art Laffer. But I had the privilege of working with Art Laffer on a speech that we gave to the Detroit Economic Club not long ago. And he's a man of extraordinary talent. We talked about tax relief and reform, sound money, access to energy, regulatory reform, and trade. And I won't go into it in great detail, except if it comes up in the Q&A. But I really do think that once we get ourselves turned in the direction of fiscal discipline, embrace renewed federalism, we know how to grow this economy. Art Laffer knows what the pathway to recovery is, and that is get government under control, get government out of the way, and California and all of America will come roaring back. We know how it's done. The time-honored principles of growth are there, and they're real. Let me close with one quick thought, if I can. It's just hard for me, for this Heartland Hoosier, to come to California and see Chris Cox too, and not think about Ronald Reagan. A lot of you were friends of his in this room. I had the privilege of hearing him speak about 3 times and spending a private meeting with him once. But my one private meeting is one I'll always cherish because of an exchange that we had. You know, I was 1988, and I was obviously much younger, okay, thinner, and dark-haired. My wife didn't look any different at all. No kids. And we're waiting in the East Room anxiously to go into this blue room. You know the drill. It's kind of a photo op. You sit down with the president. I was a candidate for Congress, a first-time candidate. And all these other candidates were rehearsing their lines. They were going to talk to the president about a bridge that they needed, or a river they needed to go with the bridge they got last year. You know, whatever. Anyway, you'll get that later. It'll be fun. So I was thinking something in Indiana they wanted us to talk about. And I said, you know, I ripped it up, shoved it in my pocket, and I looked at my young bride, and I said, you know, I'm probably going to tell my grandkids about this conversation. I'd really like to say something. It was meaningful to me. And Karen said, well, I think you'll just speak from your heart. So, you know, mindful of the fact that I was the Youth Democrat Party coordinator in 1975 in my hometown until I heard the voice of this B-movie actor who began to kind of speak into my life with the timeless ideals and values and common sense that convinced me that I was actually a Republican. So I sat down with the president, and it was the summer of 1988, in the waning months of his administration. And I looked at him, and he said to me, just the 2 of us there, I mean, with the photographers and the film people. And I said, he said, well, Mike, how's the campaign going? And I said, well, Mr. President, I said, really got something I'd like to say to you. And he said, well, go ahead. And I said, you know, I'd just like to thank you for everything you've done for this country and everything you've done to convince my generation of Americans to believe in this country again. And for as long as I live, I'll always believe that in that moment, the 40th President of the United States of America blushed. Like you've never heard it before. He just said, well, Mike, that's a very nice thing of you to say. I said, well, I mean it. And conversation went on from there. And then I repaired to the East Room with about 20 other candidates waiting, and the president burst into the room unexpectedly because he said he heard there were some pretty ladies there. He was right. And he went to this little makeshift podium, and he took a few questions, and right before he left is what was most special to me about that day. Right before he left, he said, You know, a lot of you have said, a lot of you thanked me for what I did for this country in the last 8 years. And he said, I want you to know I don't think I did anything for this country. He said, I just think the American people decided to right the ship. And I was just the captain that they put on the bridge when they did it. And it was a magnificent moment for me. Because it expressed a humility in the man and a belief in the American people that has never left me. I mean, here was someone who understood what it was to be a public servant. And here was someone who understood that the greatness of this country is not in her treasury, is not in her military might, is not in her vast welfare state. The greatness of this country is in the goodness and the decency and the genius and the faith and the common sense of everyday Americans. He knew they would right the ship, and they did. And I believe with all my heart, here as I stand at the Pacific Research Institute, the American people are going to right the ship again. We're going to get this right.